previous sessions. But there's sort of three, reasons that really want to do this. We have this event at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, every Tuesday we've had since March, in order to keep the community connected. And when we started in March, we basically discussed with each other how things were going and what we were doing. I mean, that's still a reasonable discussion, and but we felt that we should keep these going because it's important for us to connect the community. But we wanted to introduce this semester a topic which is about what the world is going to be like post COVID, and we're inviting, most weeks we're inviting special guests, and I'll introduce our guests today. For students on the call, I think it's important for two reasons. I'm hoping that you get additional information, material that some of it you might be able to use immediately in class. I know last week, I think the speaker reinforced some things that Dean Smith was teaching in our management 330. So I think there's some things that are related directly to class, but also I always feel with knowledge and business we're always learning, and so you never know when you're going to use something and need something. So I think that's one of the reasons for bringing guests in. But I think this topic is very important for students because you actually are going to shape the post-COVID world. You're in the world of work. You're going to be advancing your careers. That's why you're here. So you're going to be shaping it. So having an idea of what it's going to be like. And for the faculty, it's pretty critical. And we've got quite a few faculty members here who are very influential in shaping the curriculum going forward, because we want to make sure that, regularly as an ACSB accredited school, we really look at our curriculum. But this is really a time really to relook at it much more fundamentally. So that's why we're doing this. And so our guest today, I'm very pleased to introduce Lucy Motze Rutishauser, who is the Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer for Sinclair Broadcasting Group. I think we all know it's a diversified media company and it's one of the few large publicly traded companies in Maryland, and it's the nearest one to us in Hunt Valley. Lucy is a finance expert, over 30 years experience with companies at different stages in the life cycle, including growth through mergers and acquisitions, downsizing, diversification. She is involved in transformation across multiple disciplines such as sales, technology, digital, business development, risk management, finance, and sits on multiple steering committees, including disclosure, communications, technology, cyber, among others. Lucy has helped lead companies through complex financial and capital market transactions, various economic cycles, and the more recent pandemic. And she frequently participates in industry panels, was recognized as Synopsys' 2020 Top Women in Media, Radio and TV Business Reports 2019 Best Leaders in Finance, Media Financial Management's 2018 People to Watch, and Variety Magazine's 2019-2017 Dealmaker Elite List. And she graduated magna cum laude from Towson University with a BS in Economics and Finance, and received her MBA with honors from the University of Baltimore. And so when you listen to what Lucy's done, and you ask yourself, what do people do with an MBA? That now but coming to UB was actually a family tradition, right, Lucy? Lucy's father holds a law degree from UB, but the Motze family themselves holds the record, and I haven't been able to pull this out of the system yet, Lucy, but we know that it actually holds the record for the largest number of family members to have come to UB. It spans at least 3 generations. So I'm trying to find some students to take you on that, but it's but it might be difficult to beat. And your husband as well is a UB graduate. I think he's an MS in finance, correct?
No, he's also an MBA.
Also MBA, right? So both went into finance. So welcome, Lucy. And I think it might be good just to set the scene for everybody, before we get really into the pandemic, just to set the scene is to say a little bit about what a diversified media company like Sinclair actually does. I mean, how do you make money? I mean, that might be the simplest thing of sort of describing the essence of your business models. And then we could talk about a little bit about the pandemic. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So look, I'm thrilled to be here in my alma mater and love University of Baltimore. I have a lot of great times there, and actually worked at the Schaefer Center for Public Policy while I was there, and did some cooperative learnings as well. So, before we talk about the business model, I think it would be helpful just so that you understand who Sinclair is, because I got to tell you, when I came here in 1998, so I've been here for about 22 years, I had no idea who they were, because we brand our company via the television stations. That is the face of the company. So you would know us here in Baltimore as Fox 45, WBFF. If you live closer to the DC area, you would know us as WJLA, which is the ABC affiliate. So now take that and spread that across the entire country. We have close to 200 television stations that we own, 89 cities across the country, and we're affiliated with all the networks. Here in Baltimore, Fox, again in DC, ABC. Go to Portland, Maine, and we're the CBS affiliate. Tallahassee, we're the NBC affiliate, and so on. We are one of the largest owners of local television stations in the country. We went public in 1995, and we've been consolidating the industry really over the past 30 years. This is, if you think about Sinclair, we are, in the 90s, we were predominantly a family-run, family-owned business. And we believe that when the 2020 Fortune 500 comes out, we will be on the Fortune 500 list. So that is quite a feat. I think it's very important to the Baltimore area as well as the Mid-Atlantic area, because over the years, the Baltimore area has lost a lot of large corporations. And so now to have one that was homegrown here in Baltimore and now to be on the cusp of a Fortune 500 company is very important. And I really don't think many people appreciate that or even know about it. So again, when I think about when I joined the company in 1998, never even heard of them. Didn't even realize that this company was sitting in our backyard. But I was reading in the newspapers back then that here was a company that was consolidating and growing and buying TV stations. And I figured, oh, you know what? They probably need an assistant treasurer, which is where I was in my career back then. And cold called them. Long story short, they hired me. They created a position for me. And here I am, 22 years later, sitting as the CFO of the company. So a lot can happen, especially for local people, right? You don't have to go to a Harvard to make good things happen. So I would say about 4 years ago, we decided, because there were so many people coming into the media space, right? Amazon Prime and Netflix and, streaming, and even the internet was coming in and really fragmenting the business. And so as a local TV broadcaster, we knew we couldn't just stay in that lane, because we would get fragmented, lose market share, lose audience share, and eventually profitability. So we were already one of the largest local news organizations in the country. We produce over 2,500 hours of local news per week across our platform. And what all the research was saying is there are two content genres that people really care about, they're passionate about. One is local news, and the other one is local sports. And we were already a leader in local news. So we started a few years ago to go out and start establishing ourselves as a leader in local sports. So the first thing we did is we bought the Tennis Channel. And we bought that in 2016. Then we bought tennis.com, tennis media. And so now we are everything tennis and tennis lifestyle in the world. And then we decided to go after regional sports networks. And so like here, your regional sports network would be Masson. What we did is the Fox was selling their RSNs. They sold them to Disney. But the Department of Justice said that Disney couldn't hold them because Disney also owned ESPN. So we went in and we bid on those assets and we won. And so now we are the largest holder of regional sports networks in the country. We have 23 RSN brands that hold over half of all the MLB, NHL, and NBA teams in those regional sports networks. So overnight, and this all happened a year ago, we did one of the largest debt financings in the country. It was over a $10 billion debt deal that we raised to buy these RSNs. And overnight, we went from being a leading local TV broadcaster focused on news to having the largest portfolio of RSNs, and now being a diversified media company focused on local news and local sports. And that is our foray into this broader media ecosystem where we have, huge companies, the FANGs of the world that are coming in. It's our way of making sure that we stay relevant, by having the two most relevant types of content out there to offer, and then being broadly distributed. So as part of being broadly distributed, we also created our own direct-to-consumer, ad-supported digital streaming content called STIRR, S-T-I-R-R. If you haven't downloaded the app, go ahead, it's free. And we now have 100 channels in there, as well as video on demand. But what's unique about it is, unlike any other streaming service out there, we actually insert our local news. So you can get local news within STIRR as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing to stay relevant, to grow our footprint, and to compete in this broader media ecosystem where there are a lot of new entrants, but yet where advertising continues to grow and where media and video consumption continues to grow. So that's a little bit about Sinclair. And so, Murray, where do you want to go from here?
Well, tell us, during the, how was the business affected, during the pandemic?
Sure. So, so in order to understand the pandemic, it's important to understand our business model, which Murray had touched on. And so we make our revenue in one of two ways. The first one is through advertising. So you turn on the TV, you see a commercial runs. That's the advertising, how we get paid. The other one is subscription based, and this also goes by the name of retransmission fee. So what happens is, let's say you are a subscriber of Comcast or Verizon Fios. Pick your cable or satellite company. We will give those satellite and cable companies, we'll call them distributors, we will give our 24/7 stream to them to air on their systems. But for that, they have to pay us a fee because we're the ones who are buying all the content, we're producing all the content, we're incurring all the cost of those shows. And so we're basically letting them retransmit our signal, but they have to give us a fee for that. Because again, when you think about what it is that we do with local news, and sports, and those being the two most relevant content genres, the local broadcasters are a very big portion of what continues to get them subscribers and for them to keep their subscribers. So advertising and subscription. So what happens with COVID? COVID comes along, and the first things companies will typically do in a downturn is to cut their marketing budgets, right? So a company's marketing budget would be advertising to us. So second quarter, our advertising revenues down 36% in the quarter. And half of our revenues come from advertising. So you can imagine, how big of a decline that was. But the other thing that happened so that's on the broadcast side. On the sports side, where 90% of their revenues come from subscriptions and 10% from advertising, second week of March comes along, NBA, NHL, they all decide to suspend the season. So now all of a sudden on the sports side, we don't even have live games that are taking place and have no idea when the live games are even going to come back and whether or not baseball is even going to start on time, which it doesn't. So we go through the end of March, all of the second quarter, no live games, which is what drives the RSN side. And remember, we just bought these things a year ago, and now all of a sudden we've lost all of our live games. And we have the broadcast sector, which is half of the revenues dependent on advertising, and all of the advertisers, the businesses out there are cutting their ad budget. So those were the two things that were hitting us. Now, I remember I was actually on vacation in March when NBA and NHL are coming out saying they were going to delay their seasons. And so I spent most of my vacation on the phone with, all of our department heads, telling them, that's it, you have got to stop spending, right? All cost controls go into effect now. So I've been with the company 22 years. So I lived through the aftermath of 9/11. I lived through the 2002 downturn. I lived through the Great Recession. So there's a playbook that, CFOs can very easily pull out that says, here are the things that you do in phase one, right? So I had already lived this in the Great Recession. So I knew that immediately what was going to happen, right? That our advertising was going to decline quickly and deep. And as a result, we were going to have to stop all travel and entertainment. We were going to have to stop any of our own media spending and promotion and marketing budgets. We were going to have to delay any new hires, delay any capital expenditures, such that it was just essential only. So what I would tell them is, you need to make sure that you stay in compliance with the regulators, with any licensing requirements that we have, safety reasons, make sure the signal stays on the air and the picture quality good. But outside of that, everything stops right now. And so we were able to put the brakes on very early in order to hedge and counter the declines we were going to see in the revenue. And we did a great job with it. Again, many of us have been here for a long time, so we knew exactly what had to be done fast. So that's kind of what happened. Now, the good part of COVID, if you can say there's a good part, is that it really made us look at how we were doing business. What learnings could we take away from this? In one hand, our viewership was just extremely high, whether it was news or other things, because nobody could go out. So the only form of entertainment they had was to watch TV. And everybody, because they didn't understand what COVID was, how was it spreading? What was it going to mean for their families? Everybody was watching the news. So our news viewership was through the roof, and right now continues to be higher than it was a year ago. And so now we have high viewership, right? But we don't have, all the advertisers there. So we can't quite sell through those ratings. What I like to say is, thank God it's a political year this year, because that is a big part of advertising all the political ads that you see on the news is a big driver for us. So that is also a part of the hedge for us this year. We didn't have that in 2009 with the Great Recession. So we're very thankful it's a political year this year. The other thing we had to do is because we are broadcasters and we have news, we're considered an essential business. So we never officially shut down. So we have about 10,000 employees across the company. And I would say about a third of them were working, every day in the office. So our news people and our engineers and the people that have to keep the signal on the air, they were always there. The other, call it, 6,000, 7,000 people, within 1 week, we transitioned to home. And I got to tell you, for never having to do that before, especially with so many people, I think we did a fabulous job. It took us 1 week. We had already outfitted a lot of the employees with laptops so they could take their laptops home with them. It's not like we had to go stand them up with new equipment at their home. And other than a few, technical glitches you would expect, maybe somebody's Wi-Fi, wasn't strong enough, those kind of things. I think we did a fabulous job with that. So the other impact, I would say, is supply chain issues. So, we're still trying to roll out technology. We're still trying to repack our stations according to the FCC's national broadband plan. We do have some people that had desktops that we had to get laptops to. So we have some supply chain issues that we're trying to work around, or had. Those have all now been fixed. But some of our advertisers, you think about the auto industry, they couldn't get cars to the dealers. Now the dealers were allowed to stay open to do service, but they couldn't sell cars initially. States started allowing them to do that. However, they couldn't get the inventory because the cars weren't getting built for them to sell. And so, we've dealt with these downstream supply chain issues and their impact on us through advertising. The other thing I would say is forecasting. It has been very, very difficult and challenging to forecast in this environment. So I can go back to 2008 and 2009 and see what happened to GDP and what happened with our revenues, and try to form some correlations to apply to COVID. But that was a very different downturn, because that was a financial crisis where access to credit was limited and it shut down. Here with the pandemic, we have small and medium-sized businesses that are shutting down, which affects us in a different way. So forecasting has been a challenge. And just, I've read more economist papers from the major banks over the past 6 months than I probably had in years, just trying to understand, is it a V-shaped curve? Is it a U? Is it an L? What is this going to look like? And when can we expect to come out of it? We've had to do a lot more transparency and disclosure, not only because the SEC has requested companies to put more disclosures in their filings, but we've really had to handhold Wall Street through how this is affecting our business, but also the employees, right? The employees they don't know what's going on. They don't know when they're going to come back to work. And so we really upped the amount of communication that our CEO was doing to all the employees. to, really to keep them in the know, and because we don't want, they're already stressed because of the health concerns that are out there. We don't want them stressed about the work environment and what's going on there. So we upped the amount of communications that we were doing. We realized that our salespeople that are commission based, right? If you don't have advertising, they're not going to get paid. And so we converted our commission based people into a base salary so that, they could still have a level of income coming in. We changed out some of the vacation plans, let people maybe where their spouse got laid off and they were short money, they could cash out vacation. So we really tried to do what was right for the employee, even though those kind of things would cost the company money. It was the right thing to do. We have to take care of, of our people during these kinds of times. And then we did a lot more trainings, right? Like people had never been on Teams or Zoom or Skype video calls. So we had to train people how to do that. And then what we found were people started to get, they missed the social interaction, right? And they felt like they just couldn't walk away from their work at the end of the night because it was always sitting there in front of them. So we started to do more management trainings, how to keep your staffs engaged more. We even encourage people, like when a conference call is over, maybe stay on the call for an extra 5 minutes and just kind of talk amongst yourself like you would in the hallway, right? And try to build some kind of normalcy and a little bit of downtime and camaraderie into a lot of these video calls. And, we encourage people to do, lunch calls together, happy hour, video happy hours, things like that. So I would say those are probably some of the big things that we did over the past 6 months.
Wow, that's quite so there's quite a lot of, you mentioned earlier on, and you mentioned, I know in your bio, you've been working a lot of transformation, but there's a lot of things happening there right at the same time. That definitely is impressive. What I'd like to do now is sort of break into small groups, okay? Let's see, and this is going to be the tasks of the groups is I want you to come up with questions that we can discuss after a break about areas you would like to explore around how this is going to continue post COVID-19. Okay, so as we emerge from this, areas in which there might be things that will change, or threats to that business model, or practices that might go back, and so that's why I'm not going to specify exactly what you're going to talk about, but I'll let you do that. We're going to have randomly assigned groups. There's more. I recognize there's more faculty here than students today, and so if you're a student, I mentioned this in previous meetings, you get equal voice, okay? This is not, you don't get any grades for this. In fact, the only people who get really graded are the faculty. You can grade them, but you've got equal voice here. So I'm just gonna break this into all right, so we'll be in breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. It'll be random, okay? And I'll see you in 15 minutes, okay? Thank you, okay?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Miss Marilyn. Hi, Miss Danielle.
Hi, how are you, Michael?
Okay, yourself?
Good.
Good.
I had to wear a sweater today. It's cold.
Are you in the
cold this morning? But it's lovely out later this
Is
afternoon.
it? I haven't been out for a while.
No, it was beautiful. I have a new brick front stoop.
Oh, okay.
We had concrete and it was sinking, so we had it replaced. So I had to just sit out in the sun for a few minutes this afternoon, and it was delightful.
Nice.
Hi, Rachel. Are you there?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Yes.
How are
Oh,
you?
fantastic. I'm doing very well. I just finished up my work day and went ahead and hopped on here afterwards. So I'm definitely interested to see what the going ons are. So this is like the first time I've done one of the breakout groups. So
Okay.
how are y'all doing today?
Good.
Doing well.
I'm the director of marketing communication at in the business school. So my name's
Okay.
Danielle.
And I'm the associate dean.
And I'm student Michael
is a big
Brown.
entrepreneur. So how
That-
about you, Rachel? So what's your interest and what questions do we need to bring back to Lucy?
Honestly, I'm still kind of thinking, I guess,
Uh-huh.
this is my first time like doing this, so I'm just kind of getting my feet wet.
Okay. Well, one of the things that caught my ear was when she was talking about forecasting. I thought that was interesting how they're putting it together to forecast what their dollars in advertising and things are. But that's that's what perked my attention. So I know that they're a multimedia conglomerate at this point. And the fact that they grew since the 90s into a possibly a Fortune 500 company, that's kind of impressive too. And then the other thing was that how they took care of their employees, the ethics behind taking care of your employees. So those are the three things that I see questions we could pose there. What do you guys think?
Well, the thing that kind of piqued my interest, obviously losing advertising revenue, not a surprise.
Right.
However, with their very high rate of subscriptions, and particularly in the local news, you wonder if some of that, how much of that has been replaced. Because, I mean, she mentioned the political environment. That's certainly one where you see lots of advertising. But I have to tell you, I actually watched a lot of the U.S. Open tennis,
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't help but see 5 or 6 ads for UMGC.
Oh.
So I'm thinking about, who is trying to reach, an audience in post-COVID times. So obviously they're selling, of course, they're local, but they're also trying to sell online. And so it was kind of, and we know they have a big, very big,
Gigantic,
budget.
gargantuan marketing budget.
So
Right.
that was kind of interesting is where, how it's turning around, and if there's been some are down and some are up, and what's the new, so what for those folks who are out there trying to sell ads, who's taking the bait and who is, saying they can't do it. Well, I mean, they can do it and they will do it, and some just aren't going to be able to have the money. So that kind of was a curiosity.
So yeah, it's like what's the recovery look like from the second quarter?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like what
Exactly
it
right. And
what
actually, sports has started going a bit again. So also that should have some positive impact, because the baseball is on with regional sports networks. I didn't hear her mention, Michael. Do you know if one of those is Fox Sports Network? Does
I
anybody?
didn't hear her mention Fox at
She
all.
didn't mention it. I
Yeah.
know.
No, because
She
it
talked about regional sports network.
right. I don't think that's in their portfolio.
I would guess not as well.
No. They have a lot of online internet based subscription newsletter websites that in sports and news, in addition to the affiliates that they have. They're pretty diversified actually for a media company.
But going back to your forecasting, I would just have to guess over the short run, call it 1 year, that news market is going to stay very good. So therefore, how can they translate that aspect? Sports is a lot more questionable how that's going to play out. I mean,
Mhm.
I think, because I think there's some underlying dynamics in the whole sports industry that that will undergo some change as well. I mean, just think about college sports. As
Right,
an
yeah.
example. It's like COVID has revealed lots of fractures
Mm-hmm.
in many areas in the United States. So talk about college sports, talk about healthcare, talk
Right.
about equity. There's so many ways you can take that, and it kind of is brought to the forefront, some weaknesses, and then you got to figure out how is that going to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got whole politics on top of it.
Right.
Right.
I wonder if the social issues happening in the country today that's connected to sports and politics
Yep.
have any bearing on their forecasting. After the election is over with
I think
and the
fascinating.
baseball season, the football season, and the basketball season ends and relaunches next year, I'm thinking that viewership should still be up for sure. I don't know if that helps with forecasting though.
But I do think that that's a very interesting intersection.
Right. for
And
sure.
I've been curious about that, the sports, social justice, and the political tied up with COVID. How's that all going to play out?
So social issues and how it would impact their ability to forecast.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because they're both connected to sports and local television as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's also interesting is how it plays out nationally versus, the Washington Post has been doing this, it's in terms of politics, but they're looking at some of the swing states in terms of the vote. And so they will put like the 7 states of Michigan, of Wisconsin, and they kind of divide the state up, in terms
Oh, I see what you're saying.
this region, it's more rural, it's more white, it's lower income. This region, it's more urban,
Right.
it's more educated, and how it impacts the vote. Well, think about that for local news across the country and all the different markets that they're in, and how that plays out in terms of their portfolio of both regional sports networks as well as for the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fascinating.
Wait, so how do you report how do you report local news that's also covering all regions of a city?
It's more like, think about your social issues and that local news and even local sports. What's the varying impacts depending upon your region, depending on where you are?
Wow.
So
Well, because you can't help but think of Fox, because their name is going to be tied to
right.
Sinclair. So Fox, we know, has a certain perspective, I'm not going to say perspective, persona that people know.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they're not a Fox. They're Fox and ABC. She was
Right.
very good. She was very clear in making, but you can see that, if you think about those, how does that play out in a very highly politically charged, social justice charged, COVID environment. I just think it's some fascinating sociological questions that, that really, how do you forecast that? To go
Right.
there, and I don't know, it may not really be a big impact for
When my family was interviewed at the very beginning of COVID by Fox 45, because my husband had COVID. So we were interviewed, and they was also rebroadcasted. That same segment was rebroadcasted across the country at these different Sinclair affiliates. So I had all sorts of people contacting me during that time.
You were on the ABC National News.
We made the ABC National News too. So yeah, it was quite the experience. I'm glad my 15 minutes of fame are done.
Well, who contacted you?
Well, so I went to high school with a guy who was an AP sports reporter and now works for Sinclair.
Wow.
Not a reporter, he was an editor. So he works for a division of Sinclair, sports division of Sinclair. And he's like, I'm posting on Facebook, and he said, your story is really interesting. Do you mind if I drop your name to one of the Fox affiliate in Baltimore, see if they want to run with it? And yes, they did. So they've been following us. We did 3 interviews, I think, with them. So yeah.
So Michael and Rachel, Danielle's family, they were in the early days.
Early days.
But they quarantined her husband in one room, and so they would deliver him his food on an ironing board.
Right. So yeah, if you look on ABC News, they took. I had pictures of our famous ironing board. Where it was like a transition zone where I would feed my husband.
Wow. How is he doing now?
He's doing pretty good. Other than the fatigue. The fatigue is the thing that lingers.
He's still going through that.
Yeah, it was 40 days to test negative. So it took him a long time to test negative. And then the repercussions of that, of the fatigue, comes and goes, depending.
So do you know, and this is a question I don't know the answer to.
Oh, we're going to go back in 30 seconds.
If it took 40 days, do you know, was he still throwing off the virus?
Well, he was still testing positive.
So do you know the answer to that?
No, because I don't think nobody knows the answer.
Right.
So there's my answer to that.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, I get it. All right.
All right.
We're supposed to leave.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you, Rachel.
Nice meeting you guys.
See you guys in a second.
Okay, welcome back. Almost everybody's back. Not everybody, actually. I'm not seeing everybody. Is everybody back? So if you put up in the chat your questions or propositions or whatever, that would be useful. As you're doing that, maybe I'll, here's one. So one group was the discussion about the unequal impact on of the pandemic on economically depressed areas versus those that are surviving or thriving in the pandemic and after. So maybe you can comment on that and how you see that, but also, the extent to which, is that an issue for the business, for the Sinclair business model, or Sinclair's, general positioning in the community? So.
Yeah, so when you think about our roots, which is really over-the-air TV, which is, think of the antennas, a lot of people in either rural areas or the urban areas, right? They're not connected to cable or satellite, and so really the only place they can get TV and news is via over-the-air, which is what broadcast does. And so that's a very important part of our, our viewership base. And so, when I think about the pandemic and I think about everything else that's taking place, current events, that's really where our local news comes into play, is to make sure that we're putting the facts out there, we're informing people, we're letting people make their own choices about how they decide on an issue, but it's all about local for us. Even though we reach nationally by our footprint, it is a footprint made up of local TV stations that are, so I like to say, local focus, national reach.
That's interesting. Let me add to the question. I know you discussed this in the group that you were in, but because when you're talking about local, I wonder if you could comment about, how you see, threats to your future business model between, that traditional TV-based media distribution and even web-based digital against grassroots type a distribution like YouTube or I know this is Danielle's favorite is TikTok, but that's a video for another day. But it's but they're but so this sort of between local and between the both are local, but one is that traditional starts with a traditional TV station, the other is a kind of grassroots distribution.
Yeah, so we deliver different things than what you're going to find in a lot of the I'll call it social media, right? We're doing, again, we're focused on news and sports, and we have a lot of general entertainment content. But they're what we're doing is 30-minute, 60-minute type programming, as opposed to what's happening on Instagram and others. Now you can find us. We will put news stories up there and video and footage on all of those platforms. And we have Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds and LinkedIn. We're on all those sites, but and we have a lot of people that access our news stories and our corporate stories that way. But and then when you think about like a YouTube TV or other distributor, right, that's a platform for us, right? So we have the content and they are just distributors of other people's content. And so there's a partnership there with us, and our content drives their viewership and their monetization.
And so what would you say is there a silver lining of the sudden changes you made? You described a lot, and are there changes that you've made that you feel you're just bound to retain these after life returns to normal?
Sure. So we were talking in our breakout room, I think, we probably will not return 100% to the office. That will incorporate some type of hybrid model. Some people have to be in the office. As I mentioned, we had over 3,000 employees that never transitioned to work from home. But for the others, we will probably end up in a hybrid model. We'll take a look at our facility space and see, if not everybody needs to be in the office, how do we shrink that? The use of technology, we've already, I was saying that, even when I do a lot of conferences with Wall Street, investor conferences, and I have to spend 2 days on the road just to go to New York and do the conference. Well, now they've all transitioned to video conferences as well, and these virtual meetings. And so I think that will continue to some extent as well.
Right. That's and so, the CFOs are responsible, I guess, for forecasting. Okay. Is that going to be, how does that going to work? And how is that, obviously it must have been impacted quite seriously during the pandemic, but how do you see that emerging as you go along? Do you see that it's going to be more and more difficult to forecast, or do you have some secret models that you've got up your sleeve there?
You know what? It already is difficult to forecast because, again, I really don't know, and the economists out there can't really come to a consensus on the shape of the curve as we come out of this. So all we can do is say, okay, what happened in 2008, 2009, and overlay that, and really just run different scenarios based on, I would say it's more sensitizing the model to know, like, how much would our EBITDA have to drop before, we violated any kind of debt covenant, for instance.
Mhm.
The good thing is we have plenty of cushion, but we run those constantly, those kind of models.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, which I've got absolutely no idea what I'm saying, Lucy. Okay, all right. So, I'm translating from Portuguese for this one as well. So, what about exploiting the physical presence for revenue opportunities in infrastructure? 1080p, ATSC 3.0.
I unmuted Eusebio.
So first of all, I am thrilled that somebody knows ATSC 3.0. That is.
I have, Lucy, I have to do a disclaimer. I've been working with Brian Bach on this. We actually did a whole case with my class last semester, looking at, and we work with Dell also. But I think that's an interesting bit. I mean, we did something different, not we didn't do on ATSC, we did on rethinking baseball, but I think there is a shift in terms of opportunities for basically this is, you can actually think of using the network that exists on Sinclair for radio stations to actually use for example, smart cars, using that network to actually do two-way transmission for smart thingies in the city or in the areas they cover. So there's a big opportunity for infrastructure. That's the translation of the question, Mary.
Yes,
Thank you. Yeah, that helps a lot. I appreciate that.
No worries, anytime.
Go on, Lucy. You answer the question. Okay.
Let me just say this. ATSC 3.0, it's a fancy way of saying the next generation broadcast signal. So again, putting cable and satellite and phones and all that aside, right? Because those are people that just will help distribute our content. Our foundings are being in over the air. So you see the big TV towers down at TV Hill, down, near the train station. So those are, 1,500, 2,000 foot towers. And we transmit our TV signal out. It blankets the entire marketplace. So everybody in the marketplace gets the same show at the same time. No interference issues. But the problem is, under the current standard, is we can only be received on that fixed TV set in your house if we come in over the air. Otherwise, if you want to see us here or on a laptop, we're coming in via cable, satellite, or phone. 3.0 will allow us to get to all those devices over the air. So they just need to get this chip. And the good thing is Sinclair helped build this chip, the IP that's in there. So we will eventually have the over-the-air signal be mobile. You can be in a car riding down the street and get our signal over the air. You can, get it on any device. You can be out of the home. These are all things you can't do today with the TV signal. So that opens us up to a lot of new monetization and targeted ad opportunities. But we're also talking to the auto manufacturers because they want to use it to get 3D navigational tools into the cars for self-driving cars. The governments or municipalities are looking at it because the emergency alerting features can get 3D blueprints to first responders. In TV towers hardly ever go down, whereas the cell system will go down frequently when you're in a tornado or a hurricane situation. So we can get those to first responders. We'll also at some point be able to wake the device up so that if you're sleeping and tornadoes coming in, your device will wake you up until you get to coverage. So there is so much we can do with this new technology. And we actually have just launched it now in, I believe it's 6 cities across the country. Baltimore, I believe, is slated to go up in 2021. There are 20 TV sets that now have the 3.0 chip in it. But in a couple of years, you'll be able to customize your TV viewing and personalize it and things that, you know, trust me, it is not your grandparents' TV when this comes out. So, so I appreciate you, you raising that. You can see we get very excited about it because we help build it.
I'll tell you this, Lucy, Dell would have a little tear in his eyes listening to you.
Yeah, I work,
Okay.
well, yeah, Del and I worked together for a lot of years.
Yeah, he's been in the company for like, he's the CTO of the company. That's really interesting talking to him because he actually got the entire, so that's interesting to see that the company has the opportunity to actually shift. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
That sounds, yeah, that sounds, I'm looking forward to it. So ubiquitous, is that ubiquitous media, going from ubiquitous computing to ubiquitous media, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, like people use
It's,
that term. I just like to say, look, it's going to be mobile, portable, and customizable.
That's, so here's the last question, because I know people are, and I know you, Lucy, as well, have got a schedule. Some people are teaching, but here's the last question, and this is really for both faculty and students. You know, weighted a little bit to faculty, but it's also for students. You know, what are the skills that you believe that are going to be most critical in this new world that we're going into, that is absolutely essential, that you know, we're making sure that our students come out with? Okay.
Yeah. So look, I would say, given that this is, you know, primarily the business end of it, you know, Excel, right? We live and die by Excel, and we need people that, you know, they know how to do pivot tables. They can do vertical lookups. They can do, you know, really, really, really good Excel skills, because things are happening so fast in corporations. We don't have time to be having people, you know, figure it out, build simple Excel spreadsheets. We need spreadsheets that can take on some of this you know, filtering and automation. We also need people that can critically think, right? So I look and you know, you learn all your basics, right? You got to learn your journal entries and things like that. But we really need people that don't view themselves as just like, I'm putting together a spreadsheet, or I'm producing a report, or I'm asking this person why this variance, and they're telling me, and then I'm just remessaging it. We don't want that, right? We really want people that are going to challenge the assumptions, that are going to say, you know what, I worked on this project over here, and we had these insights. Can I take those insights over here, or can I help this you know, this management team understand what went wrong, you know, over here? Or why do you think you're going to triple your revenue? We've never done it before. So we really want people that are going to critically think and challenge and not just produce, right? And so the other thing is, you know, is really understanding, and this would be more for the, you know, I guess the marketing side, is understanding how social media is being used. You know, we all use it. We all put our content up there to make sure that those social media platforms stay relevant, right? If, you know, in my view, if we all took our, you know, the news down from there, you know, I think you would have, in some cases, different business models on some of those social media platforms. But so long as consumers are going there, we need to understand how to use them, how to do messaging, how to use them to drive through the entire platform of products that companies have. You know, also technology, right? I spend more time right now trying to educate myself on AI, on robotics processing, on blockchain. You know, these are all things that are coming. And it's not to replace people. To me, it's more of how can you get rid of a lot of the mundane and the repetitive tasks so people can think at a higher level and contribute more. And so, you know, these are all things that we're looking at. And again, I spend more time trying to educate myself on how can we use these in you know, the financial departments.
That's great. Now, listen, I really appreciate that, and it's And I think that's good. It's a good challenge. We'll take that up and send you. I know we do have some graduates of UB working at Sinclair, so we'll hopefully we'll send a lot more. So no, this has been very good. I think it's it's great having our alumni come back and talk to us. So really appreciate it, and also gives insights into how models are changing, business models are changing, and particularly how they're changing in this world. So that's so this has been fantastic. So I thank you. And so next week we're going to have the same. We're going to next week just as an anticipation, and I do have to read this so that I get it exactly right. Our guest next week is sorry, I had this Guy Tajtunovic, and he's the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity firm called CHEQ. They're headquartered in Tel Aviv. They do have offices in New York and San Francisco, Tokyo. So they're a sort of fast-growing startup. I think this will be kind of interesting across the piece because it is a startup. And one of the things we've been talking about is how whether startups can save the world. That's one of the topics we were talking about. But he's a kind of fascinating cybersecurity guy because was a professional national intelligence cybersecurity guy, doing whatever Israeli military people do in that field. Successful entrepreneur, and another company got together with cybersecurity buddies from Tel Aviv and founded this worldwide company. And it crosses over, data analytics, marketing. It's and entrepreneurship. So I think that it'll be kind of interesting. So that's 4:00 next week, and so everybody. So Lucy, again, really appreciate you coming, and I'm looking forward to the day where we can meet in person again. So thank you, and thanks everybody.
Thank
you. Be safe. Have a good week. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Bye.
you. Thanks everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.